Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting for September 4th, 2018. For those that have never been to a meeting before, just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, if you would silence your cell phones, we'd greatly appreciate that. Second of all, after we call the roll and do the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, the way it works is city staff will present on an item, and then initially it's open just to the commission for technical questions. Once technical questions are done, we open it up to the public for comment or questions. If you have something to say, we ask that you step up to the microphone and state your name and address, so we have that for the minutes. Once everybody who has wanted to speak has had that opportunity, we bring it back to the commission, close public commentary, bring it back to the commission for discussion and a vote, and then we move on to the next item. So with that, let us call the roll.
Kathleen Prop, David Borsick,
Present.
Ed Bowen, Steve Cummings,
Here.
Michael Ford,
Here.
John Hins, John Kiefer, Robert Weigart,
Here.
Thomas Perry, Andrew Mott, Tom Foytek.
Here. He just walked in. Kathy just walked in. Moving on to the next item, approval of the August 21st minutes. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions, et cetera?
Motion to approve. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion clearly passes. Item number 1 has been withdrawn from the agenda. So let us move on to item number 2. Land acquisition of properties located at 851 through 905 West 17th Avenue and a portion of 1732 Knapp Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
The Department of Public Works is requesting the approval of, to acquire approximately 3.5 acres comprised of 5 parcels along the south side of West 17th Avenue, east of Knapp Street, as a safety measure from methane gas emanating from a former landfill south of the site. 3 of the 5 subject properties contain 3 single-family homes with accessory structures, while the remaining 2 are currently undeveloped. All the properties are in close proximity of a city-operated Keenest landfill, which operated during the late 1960s after being used as a quarry. And then over time, the decomposition of the organic materials in the landfill created methane, which poses a danger by gas entering basements of nearby homes. The city has hired AECom to conduct investigations to determine the amount and extent of the migration of the methane from the landfill. The surrounding area to the south and west are predominantly single-family residences with SR5 zonings. To the east, we have a public elementary school. And to the north is Quarry Park, which is a public park with a similar history of this subject site, which was a quarry turned landfill, and about 10-15 years ago started to receive methane remediation by the city. The aerial photo of the site showing the 5 properties we're going to be acquiring, or the city wants to acquire. Again, the 3 of them contain single-family homes. This site is undeveloped, and then this is actually one very large single-family parcel, which will be subdivided with the city hoping to acquire the back 300 or so feet of that property. And let's see, next slide here. This is an air photo from 1937 showing the land when it was in use as a quarry operation. The one to the north is the Keenest landfill quarry, which was used by the city for municipal waste. And then this is the Paulus quarry, which again was used by the city for municipal waste, but not organic. It was mostly used for building materials. With the city contracting with AECom, AECom performed several investigations to determine the amount and extent of the methane generation. Their report indicates that most of, or if not all of the methane generation is occurring from the Keenest quarry to the north. However, the Paulus quarry doesn't appear to be generating methane, but it's functioning as a methane storage cell for methane gas. The methane concentrations in both quarries are in excess of the lower explosive limit, which poses a risk structures constructed on and nearby the former quarries. So in an effort to control the migration of the landfill gas, the city is proposing to develop a methane gas mitigation system similar to what was built at Quarry Park to the north. This will, of course, requires the purchase of the 3 homes and the 2 vacant parcels for the system to be adequately designed and built, and allow the city to properly grade and cap the property, and comply with Wisconsin Department of Natural Resource regulations. So with that, the city is recommending approval of, this is a draft CSM of the proposed land division for the acquisition of the back side of that single-family property. But with that, staff is recommending approval of the land acquisitions as requested.
All right, thank you. Technical questions, David?
Can you tell me where the other methane mitigation areas are? Please.
Sure, yep. Director of Public Works, James Robbie's coming up here.
Could you repeat that for me, Dave?
There's other areas in there that we're doing active methane mitigation.
Yes, at Quarry Park, which on the map that Jeff has up there right now is the green area that kind of goes off to the top. And then again at the Knapp Street Quarry, which is across the street, kind of in the northern portion of that yellow parcel that Jeff has highlighted on the map. So, just off the map to the top in the yellow and then in the green areas. 2 separate quarries.
When we did those investigations, was there a reason why we didn't look at these parks?
At these
these
particular
quarries?
parcels at this time, I do not know why those weren't looked at previously.
And then the last question, did you look at the difference of acquisition and operation and maintenance as opposed to dig and dump?
What do you mean by dig and dump?
Clean out the quarry? and then
Cleaning out the
replace-
quarry and landfilling, all that would be tens of millions of dollars, because that quarry is 40 to 50 feet deep and it would all have to be hauled to a licensed landfill.
All right, other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? All right, going once. Oh, come on up, sir. If you could come up to the microphone, state your name and address, please.
My name is Noel Isley. My address is 851 West 17th Ave. I just kind of really want to know, what is a methane remediation? I don't understand it.
The system that would be installed would be very similar to the two systems at Quarry Park and Knapp Street quarries. There would be a perforated pipe system installed around the perimeter of the former deep quarry, which was filled with the municipal solid waste, which is decomposing. Vacuum pressure is applied to that system to draw any methane that is being produced inside that loop and then extract it, venting it out to the air. So your particular property at 851 would not be affected by this action.
Okay. The last question I really have then is, what would be the anticipated completion date of the project?
At this time, we do not have plans and specifications completed. We are working on completing those, so depending on the timing of being able to finish this step of the process, if it all works out, we would hope to start construction this winter and be finished next spring or early summer. But again, that is a little time dependent on being able to get everything completed and get the documents out and see what kind of bids we get.
Well, can I have a follow-up?
Sure, go ahead.
One additional, did I understand you're gonna vent it as opposed to flare it, or?
I don't have all the particulars, but I believe that, Steve, I don't know if you remember, I think Knapp Street is just vented, that's not flared, right?
At this point in time, the Knapp Street quarries don't have a high enough concentration to actually flare in the extraction system. So I don't believe that there is a plan to actually flare it, just to the concentration levels aren't there over the long term.
But you'll still get you'll still have an air permit then, or whatever, to release the methane?
Yeah, any necessary permits through the DNR will be obtained as a part of the plan preparation and permitting.
Anyone else from the audience here to speak to this item today? Come on up, ma'am.
Dutch Lane. I do own a property in that neighborhood, not adjacent to, the planned site. But I guess I'm just trying to understand what the site might look like upon completion. So is there fencing, is the pipe, how high does the pipe extend? Is it gonna be, or is it a lower profile, or what will it look like, and what is it gonna do to the surrounding area?
Good question, James.
Nope, that's fine. The general look is going to be very similar to what we currently see at Knapp Street and at Quarry Park across the street. So there will be some setup installed to hopefully at some point in time be able to turn off the active system and go to a passive system. So there would be a few taller pipes installed that would hopefully eventually function as the passive system, but otherwise the only fencing that's really going to be installed would be around the actual the venting equipment. Similar to the Knapp Street site. So, if anybody's been out or driven by the Knapp Street site, it's a wide open field. There's a bit of a mound from some topsoil there, and then there's just the one little fenced-in area where all the equipment is stored within that. And at this point, I anticipate a very similar look to what we have across the street.
Just to clarify then, will it be a grassy area, just like that? So it'll be maintained
Yes.
in the same manner?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak this item today? Come on up, sir, state your name and address, and tell us what you think. Nope.
I'm Lee Moyne. I live at 885 West 17th Avenue. I'm one of the affected property owners. I guess my question is, what are the plans to work with those of us property owners that are affected to improve on the process for transitioning out of there? We were informed of this, that it was happening over a year ago, and yet here we are still in the process of approving it. And the communication that we've had up until now has been poor, to say the least. So I want to make sure that there's a good transition plan. And I know that one of the property owners is ill health, so I want to make sure that that is addressed through that transition.
James, if you can address that too.
Yeah, getting this approval, official approval through Plan Commission and Council allows us to very actively pursue the finishing up this project. Unfortunately, we've had some workload issues in my office that have kind of delayed us getting to this point. But we do have an acquisition specialist and an appraiser under contract to get the work finished once these steps are underway and finished.
So once these steps are done, then you can move on to,
Yep, then we'll be continuing to move forward.
Kathy, you have a question for him?
Yes.
Along this gentleman's question, would you describe the process now? I know Plan Commission and Council have to approve this, but then you go back and issue appraiser looks at it and issue a price.
Yeah, there'd be a relocation order prepared. The appraiser would do a report. There had been some preliminary work done that would obviously need to be updated to be current. And then, the process as outlined in state statutes proceeds from there. So then, there are timelines once that continues on. Once the appraisal is issued, then there are certain timelines to be able to, ask for a second appraisal, and, all those timelines are outlined in the statutes.
Well, so this gentleman and others would have an opportunity to say, I don't think it's a fair price, and there's a process
Yes, there's a process.
that once he gets this official letter will be carefully outlined.
Yeah, and some of that's already been outlined in some of the communication that was sent prior. Obviously, yes, this has drug on longer than we had originally planned on it to. But yes, the statutes are set up to protect the property owners in acquisition processes. So, once that appraisal report is issued and, an offer may be made, if they say, we don't like that appraisal, we would like another one issued. There's a certain timeline that has to be requested, and then a second appraisal gets done, then those are compared, and then kind of a back and forth at that stage goes on.
Question, sir?
So to his point, there was one appraisal already done in the late summer and so forth. So knowing that the odds are pretty high that we would be moving, right? There's no incentive to us to make any improvements on the property. So as time goes by, the property degrades and so forth. So if we were to come in and do another appraisal, how does that get taken into account? Also knowing that market prices are rising in the meantime. So I want to make sure that's being captured and addressed as well.
Those are all things that our acquisitions consultant will work through on our behalf, and, you know, certainly, you know, as the back and forth takes place, you know, that the consultant is the primary one having those conversations, and when it gets to making a recommendation on the purchase price, you know, if they are able to come to an agreement, then, you know, that's where you come to us and say, okay, here's where we're at agreement on, and move forward. You know, but we really rely on the acquisition specialist to take the lead in that process, because they're well-versed in the statutory requirements, whereas, you know, we do this every few years.
Thank you. Next person wanted to come up? Come on up, sir.
Hi, my name is Ken Larry. I own the property at 1722 Knapp Street. We're very familiar with the quarries. My wife was a Schamberger, that's the old Schamberger property, and her mother was a Paulus, so that was actually their land that the Paulus quarry was on. And they lost 2 children to those quarries. My question is, if you develop this vacuum center like you have on Knapp Street, do you have any idea where that would sit, as it does generate kind of a constant noise while it's doing its thing?
Question?
At this point, I have not reviewed the plans at that stage, so we don't really have the plans at the stage of where exactly on the site that would be located. You know, generally speaking, we would try to keep it closer to the street where the power supply is going to be coming from. In this case, Public Services power supply would most likely come off of 17th Avenue, but, you know, wanting to at least keep it back somewhat from 17th. Unfortunately, I don't have an exact location on that yet. Within the next few weeks, we should be getting plans further along where we might have a better idea on that, so I could circle back around with you at that point in time. But we don't have plans at that level at this point in time.
David, you have a question for?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if directed to you or to staff, but it seems to me when we did the Knapp Street, or the other remediation, that site plan came back to the Plan Commission for approval. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that becomes a public document, and I assume that the process is going to stay the same.
I don't know with the zoning code update, Darren, you'd have to help me out with that to determine what level of review the commission would need to have.
Yeah, first of all, we have to classify the use. Do we have to change the zoning? I'm not even sure if we need to do, we might have to do all those things yet, and I don't think we've really sat down and talked through all those issues yet, because we want to review what we did on Knapp Street, and I just don't recall Knapp Street coming back, but that could have been because of the zoning that was in place. And we have made some updates to the zoning code that not everything has to come back through the process, but this is still zoned. This would still be zoned residential, so it would require some type of zone change, wouldn't it, Mark?
It's SR5 right now.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that would give an opportunity, at least for public.
So yeah,
Sure.
it would probably go through for a rezoned institutional, most likely, Darren.
correct. What do we have, the quarry, or the Knapp Street, well, that was already a park, wasn't it?
Correct.
What was the other stuff, the houses that we bought, what did we rezone those to?
Those are all institutional now.
Okay, so we did rezone everything to institutional. So the likely, the course to follow is to change it to institutional. And then the question is this a conditional use permit inside that institutional, or is it permit? I'm saying that while he's looking through the book right now.
Understood.
Well,
Go ahead.
would this be, I know we've got a CSM to alter, is it something off of 1722? Is that what the one
The
is?
back.
Cut off 215 feet off the
Yeah.
back.
So I mean, that CSM would come back to us.
Yes.
Obviously. Would there be a larger CSM done to reflect these other 4 lots? Would those be combined, or would you be required to leave those as they sit today to manage any sort of ongoing liability with each parcel?
I'll have to look into that a little bit further, Ed, to see.
It's just it's another opportunity for us to come, to get a second look at it, I guess, if it comes back as a new CSM, I
Yeah,
suppose.
certainly I believe the split would come back. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
Aaron, if the combination would.
Combination one, the CSM doesn't give you really much opportunity to really look at any of the development on there that's
Yeah.
gonna happen. It's just how the
It sounds like
parcels
we're
are
gonna have to come back and
configured.
rezone it anyway, so.
The rezoning's gonna yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to institute that.
We'll have to have
It's
some
whether,
sort of
it's
an
whether we throw a
understanding.
PD on it or what do we do.
Yeah.
See,
But then if the rezoning came back and at the same time you presented an overlay of what the remediation was gonna look like, then the neighbors could see.
Right.
We'd have to change it to put a PD on it if you wanted to go that route, because what happened when we changed the zoning code update, we made we consider this an essential service, and we make those a permitted use inside institutional districts. There's development standards and things like that, but it's a permitted use.
Just so somehow there's visibility to the neighbors.
All right, anyone else from the public here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Alan Danhoff, 1725 Sanders Street. I'm failing to understand the need for a rezone. This is something to address an environmental issue. I seem to recall gas stations across the city were putting in remediation systems, and that didn't necessitate rezoning or anything. That was part and parcel to previous or historic use of the land. That's what this is, and I would prefer to keep the zoning at what it is, to avoid the possibility of some other use that we cannot envision today or tomorrow from being put on this land that would possibly not be in step with the single-family uses that surround.
Well, this is not a gas station. This is going to be owned by the city, so properties that are owned by the city typically put in institutional usage. All the parks are in institutional usage, all the various city, anything that's owned by a city is generally, I think, in an institutional category. That's stuff across the street too, isn't it?
Correct, sites.
But what other uses are allowed in institutionally zoned areas?
We'd have to pull up the permitted uses.
And that is what I don't think is appropriate inside of a single-family residential district.
Correct. That's a discussion we can have. We can throw planned development over it. I mean, there's other, it could be our, what is this,
SR5.
SR5. It could be SR5 with the PD over it. It could be institutional with the PD over it. There's different zoning categories where we can make things work, but it has to have the PD overlay to accommodate all those things.
So conditional use permit is out of the question?
We made them permitted, we made this type of use a permitted use in an institutional district. I don't believe we kept it as in the SR5 district.
Maybe that becomes a zoning code change instead of rezoning a large portion of a neighborhood.
Potentially.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
My name is Mark Meyer, property owner of 1732, partial, the back half, or back third or so of the property. Question being is, would there be, and we had talked about this before with Mr. Robbie about having an easement to have access to the back of that 17 property, because the property is so large.
Right.
Right now, there was access across the Queen's Quarry or across the Moyen property. I guess wanted to make sure that we were still gonna retain access,
Jeff, they still have
I'm
that?
not sure.
be it by an easement or whatever.
James can help us.
Yes, as Mark indicated, we have had those conversations, and we have made our acquisition specialist aware of those concerns and our desire to maintain that access, because they do have a shed in the back portion that is extremely difficult to access from their Knapp Street frontage. So we are aware of that, and we have informed our acquisition specialist that, that is something that we do have a desire to work with them to maintain.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Very good questions. All right, seeing none, back to the commission. Thank you very much.
Consider
Commission.
that.
Kathy wants to say something, I can tell.
I do, but
All
I'll
right.
move approval and then we can have a discussion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this as is. Discussion.
I just want to say that I remember Quarry Park had the same issues, and they had, huge pipes at one point monitoring wells. And we were told we would like to have had a more active park for Quarry Park, but you're not allowed to put structures on that kind of a parcel because of the methane problem. So I see that there's soccer goals now, but that's about it, something like that. I don't foresee that we would be able to, even if we wanted, to put anything else on that property but grass. Grass or an informal use that wouldn't involve a structure, is that right?
Yeah, the soccer goals are portable and movable. They're not actually anchored into the ground. As a part of doing the project, the DNR will be making us provide a more engineered cap over the top of this, and having items that penetrate that cap into the soils below are a concern for the DNR, because then that brings an opportunity where you're penetrating that cap and you're defeating the purpose of having the cap installed. So portable items like the soccer goals that are on Quarry Park would be one of the very few things that might be allowed. We haven't obviously gotten to the post-construction uses, other than it's going to be grass and open space and, maintained and mowed in a manner similar to the other two sites.
Right, so basically it's gonna look, in the end, it'll be like Quarry Park is now.
I
An
would
open
expect it to be
field,
very similar,
open
yeah.
grassy field with not a lot on it.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm in support of this, but I don't remember how long ago Quarry Park was and the parcel across the street from Quarry Park. But has the city taken an inventory of closed landfills and are there potential problems of methane gas in those throughout the city? I know the northeast side has several. They may have been rubbish dumps as opposed to garbage dumps, but have we taken an historical inventory and seen where there may be other potential issues for throughout the city?
I'm not aware of an inventory of other places where we would have placed, municipal solid waste. I would have to do a little bit more research on that. Certainly if it was a private use as that, we would not have the same level of responsibility as we do in a case like this where it was municipal solid waste that was disposed of at the site.
And Steve probably can remember, but Webster Stanley was a municipal rubbish dump.
Emmeline Cook.
Huh?
Emmeline Cook.
Emmeline Cook. Behind that, around Graber at one time.
So Fox Valley Tech area was also land, not a quarry, but it was like a landfill.
Yeah. Now, those weren't deep, those weren't deep.
No.
But they were different than landfills, but, different than quarries. But I think that historically throughout the city, in the low-lying areas, we had a lot of those.
And, in this case, it's, it's the municipal solid waste decomposing that is the big generator of methane. Construction or demolition debris or even large logs aren't going to decompose at a level that generate that kind of methane. So there are some differences that way, but, as I said, I'd have to go back and take a look. There are some publications as far as, a history of sanitation in the city that, are useful to try and help us identify any potential areas.
Right, other discussion?
Question?
Go ahead.
Or no, call for the
Oh.
question.
Okay. Call the roll.
Okay. Weigert,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye?
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Kiefer.
No, it's Tom.
Oh, sorry, Perry. Aye. And Foytak.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, let's move on to item number 3. Residential design standards variance to allow a porch alteration using materials not similar to the materials on the original building at 202 West Melvin Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, sir.
So this item is really a request for a variance to allow an alteration to the front porch at 202 West Melvin Avenue. I'm going to, here's the subject site in blue. It's a single-family property, and a lot of the properties around the subject property are single-family. There's a few two-family residential. To the east, not too far, a couple blocks there, is the North Main corridor there with some mixed use, commercial obviously, but the immediate properties are single-family. Similar in scale, a little bit of variation in the architectural character, but all single-family. Aerial showing the subject site here, as you can see in blue. This here shows the context looking east on Melvin down towards Maine. You can kind of get a little bit of a hint of what some of the properties look like. You know, it might be better if they were looked at straight on, but you can get a sense here. So some mixed materials and varied architectural styles, but similar scale. And then looking west on Melvin, the subject property would be to your right off of the screen there. But looking west, you can see some more of the residential character of the neighborhood there. This here is the subject property. So you can see it's this little brick house, you know, pretty quaint in appearance. There's some cut stone sills and caps. You can kind of get a sense of basically this, how this facade is treated as a composition here. It was done, at least in my opinion, by somebody who was literate architecturally, thought about how to incorporate everything. You know, the steps are pretty well incorporated, as you can see here. There's some wing walls here, flanking those steps, or brick piers in other words, leading up to the main entrance. But then you can see, obviously, the fenestration over here. Overall, pretty unique, relatively speaking, in the sense that these steps are, in fact, integrated into the facade and not simply an appendage or an add-on, as is the case with so many other, say, wood steps that are done or have been done in the community. Here's some close-ups of the area of this residence that's in question here. So basically, the applicant's requesting a variance because she wants to replace these steps. It's my understanding that, obviously, as you can see, they're pretty worn. They've kind of sort of decayed over time, and they're not suitable for walking. You know, we can see that, and the applicant stated that, and that's important. But what the applicant wants to do is eliminate, they appear to be concrete steps, and then these piers on either side, and put in steps constructed of this composite decking material, which I can pass around. You can kind of get a sense of the material there. She provided a sample. So what she wants to do is eliminate, she'd keep the same footprint of the steps, the piers would be gone. I think she stated that she'd use the same railings that are original, somehow incorporate those into the new steps. You can kind of get a sense here, looking close at the steps here. You can see, for obvious reasons, why they're not suitable for walking at this point. There's some cracking, maybe some settling, and potential issues with the brick piers that, in my opinion, could probably be rectified, but they'd have to be looked at. Here's one of the side views of one of those piers that sort of flanks and defines those steps. Another view of the subject property, the reason I put this in here is to contrast this with what I did was a quick sketch here. It's a little hard to see. I don't know why it appeared this way, but the steps here, as you can see, without the brick piers, they would just be added on, or kind of an add-on in appearance, rather than incorporated into the facade. So staff looked at this, and we discussed this internally, and our main concern is the impact that this is going to have, in our opinion, architecturally on the exterior of the residence. To the casual observer, you might think, what's the big deal? But at the same time, a lot of houses, you know, if you see wood steps or, you know, composite steps, they can be attractive. The thing is if you get rid of those wing walls, they're gone, they're gone. They're off of there, and they're not coming back. And so our concern is that once those are gone, you know, it's gonna have a negative impact. We think that the integration of those steps into the front facade is something to be celebrated. So what we also did was we looked at the grounds for approving a variance, and we felt that looking at the state statutes, cost is not defined by state statutes as a statutory reason for granting a variance, cost in and of itself. So we felt that the variance as requested is not defensible for those reasons. We as staff are not sure how many bids or how many efforts the applicant made to seek proposals for restoring the concrete steps and perhaps shoring up the wing walls. But we'd like to see evidence of a number of attempts to request proposals. We'd also like to potentially work with the applicant or see an effort to explore funding programs. The city has some housing rehab programs that perhaps the applicant could find helpful or could qualify for. But the work as proposed was not something that we as staff felt we could get behind.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right, technical questions. Thomas?
So if we deny this, then it is over, they've lost their fee, they have to come and approach us if there's a different plan?
The other alternative that I guess I could have mentioned is you could lay it over as we've done in the past. And we as staff could work with the applicant. We have done that in the past where you don't straight deny it, but we lay it over. Perhaps we look, there's got to potentially be other alternatives.
Right, so they wouldn't have to refile and.
No.
Yeah, to Tom's first question, yes. If you deny it, it's a refile.
Yep, if you deny it, yep.
Question. Ed?
Was there and I don't see it in the packet, so I'm assuming there was no drawing of the proposed work to
I
occur?
couldn't find it.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't recall receiving anything. I tried to just show a
Yeah.
sense from a massing standpoint, but obviously it's not
Sure.
close up, so you don't get the best sense of it
Yeah.
from that.
Steve?
That was being my same question too, and there's a proposal here, I'm not sure who it's from, but trying to envision what this might look like, and
It's kind of hard to
it's,
Picture it.
I'm kind of envisioning it's not gonna be anything great when they're done with it. You're the architect, Stephen, but I just see some composite steps
If they did
going
the
there.
steps
Don't match.
without, if they take down, what do you call the side things?
I call them, they're brick piers or wing walls there.
Wouldn't you
that-
have, if you had 3 or 4 steps, wouldn't you need to have some sort of railing or?
Yep, you'd have to have a
On
railing.
both sides.
Yep, by code, and then also they would have to somehow, well, they got some landscaping in there that might count for screening the area under the steps.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
David?
That's right.
Other technical questions? Go ahead, Tom.
So the wing walls seem to be the real sticking point here, not necessarily the composite material or the steps made out of the composite material. Although they would have to approach us to do the steps out of the composite material, even if they kept the wing walls, correct?
Yep. And I would say that's accurate. Ideally, they would keep the concrete steps, but I would say definitely the walls would, to me, have a bigger impact from the street.
All right, any other technical questions?
Yeah, just,
Go ahead, David.
what would be the maximum layover? 30 days? Or 2 meetings, is that what?
I know we've done 30 days in the past.
It's either, historically, 1 meeting or 2 meetings?
2 meetings is it's a little bit better. I mean, we can
Yeah,
always lay it
that's what I
over.
mean by.
Is there any requirement, though? I mean, we can lay it over indefinitely.
We don't have that on, we have
I think
that
we have
for conditional use permits and zone changes. We don't have it on design standards variances. We don't have a time limitation, but
It's not tiring.
But the reason why, as practice, it may not be codified.
Required, but yeah.
But what we tried to do was let's say maximum of 2 meetings, and I believe that's otherwise, that was a way to bury something.
Right.
And so we,
The word indefinitely has.
I get, yeah.
yeah,
Never.
thank you.
we always try and have a date.
get
You always want to lay it over for a meeting or two, because that keeps it on schedule.
Mr. Mayor?
I was just gonna say, architecturally, it's a very appealing house as built. It does speak of a certain period when homes like that were being built in the city and elsewhere that, it's like ripping off a porch. You're taking away the architectural integrity of the structure by doing this.
Right. Any other technical stuff? Okay, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Come on up.
Hi, my name's Julie Gordon. I'm the homeowner at 202 West Melvin Avenue. When I have been waiting, I've been waiting many years to be able to afford to fix the porch. I approached dozens of people to get quotes. I was turned down. No one would give me any. So finally I was second recommendation from someone else who said, call Jim Tullock. He is happy to do that kind of work. Unfortunately, the amount of dollars required to replace it as is beyond my budget. I want to get it fixed. I want to make my house look good for the neighborhood, but I physically cannot afford to redo it the way that it is. I mean, it would be wonderful, and that's initially what I asked for a quote on, but I cannot afford it. And I know you guys sit here, and it's great to keep the architectural. This is not a historic neighborhood. And if I could, I would redo it exactly the way it is, but I physically cannot afford to do that. And you can deny me all you want. My steps are now unusable. I really just wanted to have front steps that worked. This is, Jim, I'm gonna let you discuss the walls and why they cannot be fixed.
Hello, Jim Tullock. The architecture I just want to address to you on these outside walls, the wing walls, we already have deterioration in these already. So they are collapsing as we speak. So if a guy takes the most modern material that is built today, what is the difference between setting a nice set of composite steps in there, and if you walk up and down Melvin Street, 95% of them homes don't have that concrete steps anymore. They got wood steps, and they got old dilapidated wood steps. We're taking the most modern material that is made today to perfect something over on this part of a property.
It sounds like the steps aren't so much the issue as the wing walls. What is your?
The wing walls are collapsing as we speak.
What
They
is-
are on a tilt. They are tilted in, they're tilted out. There's mortar missing in between the bricks. The perfect picture he took, yes, when you're 100 feet away from it, it looks like it's all beautiful, but it's not architecture.
So
It's dilapidating.
How are you planning to replace the wing walls, or what's the?
We're just gonna build the deck straight across to where the wing wall stops, and then we'll fill that end in either with the composite decking or lattice, whatever the board approves. But it'll be closed off underneath. And we'll pour a new frost-free floating slab underneath there to carry the weight of everything else there. That's another problem. If we're talking about architecture here, they would have to pour a 4-foot frost-free wall in there to support the new concrete thing, which would take them up into about $10,000 to $15,000 when you're talking about adding on a porch. So, Mr. Architecture, yeah, it's nice to spend money, but you've got to have money to spend it.
Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you.
I did also want to say that the reason I did choose the gray composite is because along the front, underneath the windows, there is a gray ledge. It's made of concrete, and then over on the side, there's also a gray ledge of concrete, and then up above, underneath that upper window. And I thought it would fit in with the look of the house by having that gray composite. I will reuse the 2 railings. One of them is original to the building, the other one I had made when I first moved in.
Okay, don't go away. Kathy, have a question?
Yeah. Would it be okay if we did lay it over for a couple of weeks, for you to talk, you and your contractor to talk to the staff and see if there's something we can work out?
We could do that.
Because
So it'll save
in
you
theory, yeah, it would be better to try to work something out than to just say no. To those of us that don't have to spend the money, I think your house is beautiful. You know, I love that
That's all they provide.
unusual architecture. And the steps, as he points out, are part of that. But I also understand that it are deteriorating and you can't afford to do what we would like to have you do. So maybe there's something we can work out. To me, this is not irreparably ugly. You know, it looks sort of concrete, so, grayish. Whether something can be worked out, I don't know, but I guess I would prefer to try, to have the two of you sit down with staff and try to work something out, rather than say no. So, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, guys. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up.
Yes, yes.
That's my wife, she likes to come with me. Keep me out of trouble. My name is Don Lofgren, this is Vicky Lofgren. We live in the house directly east of the house in question. Now, I have exactly the same steps on my house. 12 years ago, during an economy, just like this economy, it took over a year and a half to find somebody willing to do a job that small. So when you talk about just, you know, going out and getting bids, they don't even talk to you. Now, we had our house painted this year. It took 6 different guys before they'd even come out. We had a tree taken down, a massive tree in the back, in the back. There was only one guy in the whole area that had the tools to do the job. This is not an easy job to just build back up, okay? It's not an easy job, and it cost me a lot of money to do this step. Now, they put him, one guy, he was an old guy, he was able to put him back and find brick, used brick, and he was able to put them back just the way they were, but I was still unhappy with the quality of the work, see? This is not, I know Julie's been struggling. Those steps haven't worked since I did my steps, you know, and she's been struggling, so, you know, I have no problem with whatever she does to the front of that house, because I know the way she treats that house, see? And it's not gonna be a shoddy job. I guarantee you. I have no trouble with it at all, so.
Me either.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, no one. Let's go back to the commission.
Make a motion, we lay this over for 2 meetings.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that motion? David?
I agree with that. I think this is one of the more clear-cut intents of the ordinance. But the predicament, both financial and trying to find tradespeople right now. But you know, maybe there's some magic that you can work, or there's some assistance available, design assistance, if not material assistance.
I think one part of the issue that we struggle with is I don't think we got a rendering. I mean, we have a proposal, but we don't have a rendering of how it looks. And I think Stephen, he tried to do his best, but without, you know, he doesn't have the specs, without him having specs. He's just kind of guessing. So I think that's where we struggle a little bit too, because Steve put something on there, but.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is I do think when this comes back, having some sort of, it's great to have the material, obviously that goes a long way, but some sort of a drawing showing at least how it's, you know, gonna relate to it, and how they're proposing to deal with the end and all that sort of stuff. It does make it a lot easier for us to envision, and therefore for us to, you know, look at positively. I'm not immune to the concerns here either. It's impossible to find anybody to do anything nowadays. It's really, really tough. You know, but the intent of the ordinance isn't necessarily to keep this sort of thing from happening 100%. It's to make sure that we exhaust the opportunity to rectify it in a way that's a good result for everyone, prior to going with the easiest, cheapest alternative. So while the ordinance is a little frustrating for you to deal with, I imagine, because I can't blame you for being frustrated with it, we have it for a reason, and if it doesn't apply here, we'll figure something out, but hopefully we can at least have the conversation and go from there.
Any other comments before we take a vote? All right, call it.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Orsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion to lay over 8-0.
On to item number 4, residential design standards variance to allow materials not similar to the existing cladding and overall design character at 647 Wagoo Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure thing.
So this one here is another design standards variance request. This one on Wagoo, you can see here the subject site in blue. It's a two-family structure. It's on the corner of Wagoo and Mill Street there, so it's reasonably prominent, although at the same time, there's some trees that you'll see that screen the site. So you don't necessarily have the best view of the entire facade, but we'll get into that. You can see that there's single and two-family. There's a few multifamily uses kind of in the vicinity, and then there's some urban mixed use kind of down to the southeast there. Long-term comprehensive plan recommendation, I think, is a mix of residential and commercial. So we'll see where it goes, but that kind of gives you a sense of the zoning there and land uses. Here's the subject site, an aerial of it in blue. This here shows some of the properties, excuse me, across the street. So there's a mix of siding types and pretty similar scales. Again, you know, architecturally, some variation in this case too. It gives you a sense of what's immediately across. This here shows looking east, I think up top, and then west down on the bottom. If you were standing in front of the subject property, you'd see basically these properties here. So again, mostly residential, similar scales, but you can see the different siding types and variation in the facades. So here is the subject property. These are photos that the applicant provided. Right now, I think it's clad in asphalt siding for the most part. So looking at the Wagoo and the Mill Street sides, you can kind of see that. There's some like white trim there that's pretty ubiquitous throughout the property there in the facades. So basically what the applicant's requesting here is to receive a variance to, right now it's all asphalt as I mentioned, but there's some damaged siding, I think near the front door. And what the applicant wants to do is take off this entire plane here of siding and re-side it in vinyl. The vinyl siding would be similar in appearance, or at least in color. The applicant would maintain the white trim that's on the facades right now. But they, again, in this case, stated that cost was the main reason. And they stated that the owner of the property has done a lot of interior modifications and improvements to help, you know, in terms of the tenants. But that the owner just cannot afford to re-side the entire house. They also felt that re-siding was not necessary. I guess the owner has dealt with some financial difficulties and is on a fixed income, apparently. But this is that plane, so it's just one plane of the front facade that they want to re-side there. These here are just specs for the vinyl siding that they're looking to use. And it's kind of hard, you know, you'll never get a true sense from the screen here, but they showing material samples here. I wish I had a physical sample to show you. And with this one too, again, you know, want to remind you about the state statutes and, you know, that cost in and of itself is not grounds for granting a variance. And that right now, based on the work proposed, we would recommend denial. I don't know if the applicant was able to look at other material examples that may look similar in texture at least. Might not be the exact same material, obviously, as the asphalt siding, but perhaps could be similar in texture to it. But right now, we would recommend denial, and that's essentially the extent of what we have on this one.
David, technical
Could
question.
you just go back to the picture, please?
Sure.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the sample where the Menards chip is.
Mm-hmm.
What is the material gonna look like? I'm confused. Is it gonna be just like up in the upper left-hand corner? That was this double 4-inch?
Yeah, to me, it would be I think it would be like a lap vinyl siding.
Okay.
I'm getting the sense that maybe that's an isometric view of it there, so not straight on, obviously.
Okay.
So we don't have a sample, right?
No, I don't.
Other technical questions. Tom?
What is the material above that, directly above that in the eave?
That I'm not sure, actually. I don't know.
Appears to be a different material.
It is different, I know that. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's some type of shakes or something. I'm not sure.
Other technical questions? Steve?
I've read through this a couple of times, and I'm trying to figure out, do the owners actually live in this property, or is this strictly rental both up and down, or how many units?
If I remember correctly, in the applicant, I think if they're here, they can clarify, but I thought the owner lived off-site and that they rented this, but I could be incorrect. We'll have to see what they say.
Any other technical questions?
I think, one of the concerns that Stephen was trying to get to is, I think, our concern was kind of the patchwork that it becomes from our standpoint. If it's just one plane, I think, we could have got behind maybe the entire plane changing out, but it becomes more difficult for us to sport when it's just a small a portion of one full of a facade, of a shorter facade.
How does it show the width of the front of that area on another one of your pictures?
Oh, what's it? Probably less than 20 feet, maybe.
Yeah, probably, I'd say.
A 3-foot door, 3.6, 18 to 24 feet, 18 to 20 feet.
They want to stop it on the right side of the.
I think essentially.
Yeah,
Steven?
it'd just be that plane
Right
there.
here. So it'd be this plane.
A little hard to see with the trees there, as I was mentioning, but yep, it would just be that one plane, as far as I understand.
Yeah? Kathy, do you
Yeah, I think under the porch overhang, that would remain the same. But this part that juts out,
Yep, this here.
that part right there.
That's
And
the
that's the
impression.
part that's deteriorated.
Yeah,
or-
there's-
Or some of it is deteriorated.
Yep, some damaged section apparently.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up.
I'm Mary Warnke. I'm at 5110 Stretch Lane. The owners of the property are my parents. I just wanted to clarify some of the items that you brought up. So my parents are the owners. My dad's 88. Grandparents purchased the property in the 50s. Mom and dad lived upstairs when they got married. Grandma and grandpa lived downstairs. Later on, when I moved out of the house, I moved in downstairs. When my sister moved out of the house, she moved in upstairs.
Right?
So we've all been a big part of the life of this property. And my parents now are having some financial issues due to health concerns. They're getting up there in age. Mom has cancer. Dad has other issues related to diabetes and so forth. I know that, these types of changes and so forth, you said many times that cost is not really a reason. But as I understand it, hardship is a reason. And I have documentation here that shows that last year, their gross income was $2,813. They rely on this rental property. They don't reside here, but this is rental income that they use for daily living expenses. They're well aware of their responsibilities in keeping things current. As I stated, they did last year a lot of renovation to the inside, which meant that really they made no money at all last year because they put everything in. They redid floors, countertops, appliances, sink, flooring. So this is something that they recognize in all the years of their being landlords, and they accept that responsibility. However, due to their current state and some of the estimates that I received, because we would like nothing better than to reside the entire home. But the two estimates that we got were upwards of $20,000, $20,000 to $25,000. And somebody that makes $2,800 in a year, that's completely out of their reach. We also considered selling the property, However, because the property is fully depreciated, after talking to the tax guys, a third of the entire value is gone due to taxes, and the balance, based on their current expenses year to year, would be depleted in 2 years. And I'm hoping their life expectancy is more than 2 years. At that point, they would be in a situation where they would have to be moved somewhere. They would not be able to afford to stay in the home that they've been in since 1972. So this is why I feel that this constitutes a financial hardship to them. Now, the other issue is that the siding in and of itself, while dated, and older, and you can tell by the pictures, on the rest of the house is fine. There's no missing chunks or pieces. It's functional. It looks similar to the other homes in the area. The one area that we're having problem is on that front plane, like you said, and the reason that we wanted just that first section is that, you can't really tell from there, but the porch is recessed about 6 feet in. So that is the entirety of that whole front plane, and the porch is pushed back. And so that's why we thought if we just did that front section in a material, in a complementary color, and kept the white trim, that would potentially be the best solution. Now, I'm also open to simply repairing the area, which was right adjacent to the front porch. There's literally a section that's probably about 3 feet wide to maybe 6 feet, deep. That's where the repair needs to take place. The rest of it on the surface is fine. I just thought that it would look better if we completed that entire front plane, because I couldn't find any material that was, similar to what was out there. So the issue that I have had up until now is that the depth of the tile, or the siding tile, is 14 inches. And I looked everywhere. I looked at Lowe's, at Menards, at Home Depot, I went to Nufke Lumber to see if there was some special order stuff, and couldn't find anything. However, and that's why I came up with this siding, this vinyl siding. And that was about, I believe it was either 6 or 8 inches, I can't recall now, but it's in here. However, since that point in time, since I filed the paperwork here, I did find a source online that did offer a tile that was the same size, that was 14 inches in depth by, I think, 28 or 32. In any event, it matches the size of the tile that we currently have there. It's made of a composite material, and it's designed to be painted. It comes primed, and it can be put on there, which I think would be a closer match than what I originally brought forward with that vinyl tile, and I found that online. And it was designed specifically to replace these older tiles on these older homes that are 40 to 50 years old. So I felt pretty good about that. I wanted to kind of share that information with you. I do have that here with some more, data. And so, if the issue was, I guess, with the vinyl siding in and of itself, I thought this might be something a little bit closer, to what we currently have. And then the intent would be to take a current sample somewhere and match the paint, to that, and then paint it out. So again, whether we do the entire face or just that particular area, that has that 6 foot, by 3 foot section, which I would feel much better about using a tile like this that matches the size. I couldn't do that before with a small, lap siding. It wouldn't have looked nice. That's why I wanted to do the whole face. But with this product, it might be possible to do that section. So I guess I wanted to bring that forward and have
Okay,
you guys look at that.
that's very helpful. Question, Kathy, and then Ed.
It sounds like what we just went through. It sounds like laying it over and having you work with the city on this kind of thing to see if there is some solution. And they might be a candidate for home rehab with that kind of income.
That was my question.
A home rehab grant that could cover some of the some or all of the cost. So that too could be looked into. This does seem a little stark to me in terms of putting vinyl siding on this asphalt sided home.
Right.
And I think you said, that wasn't your first choice either.
Right. I like this choice.
Okay, and I don't think our ordinance prohibits, I'm gonna call it appropriate composite materials, new materials.
No. I don't think so.
If it
they're
works with
consistent.
the existing asphalt siding, which is kinda unique.
Right.
Whether that would work, I don't know, but I would hope that we might do the same thing, lay it over and, try to arrive at a good solution.
Ed, did you have anything to add?
That was my question. Have you explored any of the income-based housing rehab grants that the city
I did
offers?
not. I was unaware that there was an actual grant. I know that there's, someone had mentioned to me, one of the builders, and again, I echo what the previous person said up here, man. I have had 7 or 8 people out. I mean, it's been brutal trying to find somebody to do this work. I'm ready to go out there with a damn hammer and.
Don't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do
That the
that.
city definitely
I'm
won't.
not gonna do that. The thought is
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it's just been very difficult getting somebody out there. I don't know what's going on in the economy right now or what the deal is, but it's been tough. Nobody wants to do a small job like that, But anyway, yeah, I'd be happy to, talk to someone some more about it. I do like that, I was excited to find that solution so that there was some material
Right. It's close.
that would blend in better.
Yeah,
In
and
terms of the size.
I think and I haven't looked at it for a while, but I think the city has a number of different types of options for this type of thing. There's grants, there's low-interest loans, there's no repayment loans, there's a lot of different avenues depending on how much you want to do here that I think I don't know that I've heard a more qualified applicant for those in a while, frankly. So, I mean, I think it's something worth exploring with the guys in planning and seeing what they might be able to.
We don't have a huge amount of grant programs. We do have a number of programs.
Right.
that
No,
are,
there's just a number of things that I think.
There's some options.
There are some options here.
There are
that-
some for
Yeah, well,
rental property.
Before you decide what you are going to do based on a product, I think explore those options and use that to kind of direct how you go. Because I certainly think this would be a perfect candidate from what it sounds like.
All right, you have anything else for us, ma'am? Any more questions for the petition? All right, anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
What would be the appropriate timeline to try to?
We did 30. I think you do
30
another
days.
do another
do
30.
You don't
your
have to
2
put a
meetings.
timeline on. Just,
Do your 2 meetings again.
Well, on a layover, you do.
no, you don't.
You don't have to, but we did 2 meetings for the other one. I do 2 meetings.
No, city attorney prefers that we put a date on something, so.
What's your
let's do
workload
2
like,
meetings.
too?
Yeah, I'd say probably 2 meetings would be nice, at least because with everything else on my plate too, so. Yep.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Move to lay it over 2 weeks?
2 weeks,
All right,
Meetings.
2 meetings.
meetings, pardon me.
2 meetings.
Pardon me, 2 meetings. Anything else before we call? All right. Call roll, please.
Schreiber,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye?
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion to lay over 8-0.
Okay, moving on to item number 5, what we've all been waiting for. Public hearing and approval of resolution recommending adoption of the Comprehensive Plan Update 2040.
All right, Tom's going to take over in a minute, but as you know, we've been working on this process for, well, it's been a couple of years. So it's taken us a while to get here, but now the process is winding down. As you know, you've been participating as part of the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. We've had meetings to talk about the update of our 2005 plan, and that's really what the product that we're producing, what we're asking you that you recommend. The resolution is the update of that plan that East Central has been working with us for the past couple of years on. Basically, it's an update of the 2005 plan, which some of you were here. Kathy was here. David was here. Steve, I don't think you were on yet. There's a couple people on this table who were, including myself, that were here in '05 when we created the comprehensive plan. That was developed under the smart growth legislation that was part of the 1999 biennial budget, I believe. And I'm just going to continue talking until we can get the media up and running. So, are we ready yet, Tom? Are we still? We're still going. Okay. So, smart growth legislation. We developed the comp plan in 2005. It has 9 elements: housing, land use, intergovernmental, transportation, cultural facilities, agricultural, natural and cultural resources, utility and community facilities, intergovernmental cooperation, implementation, economic development, housing, issues and opportunities. So we went through the process back in '05. It was a major update. We had created all these special subcommittees to work on each of these elements. When we decided to take this process on a couple years ago, we wanted to do kind of more of a lesser update, because really, once we got this comprehensive plan going, it's when the recession hit. So we went into that recession for a couple years, so there wasn't a lot happening. So we decided that we were just going to do kind of a minor update, look at the goals and objectives that we have in the plan, and see if we needed to tweak some things. And I think that over the course of the last couple of years, we had several meetings. We talked about tweaking some of these things, and we did tweak some of the goals and actions. We also there's new data in here. We use 2010 census data and some ACS data. And Tom, are you ready?
No, Jeff Winter put it on the network quick.
Oh, okay.
You can stop filibustering now.
I mean, you can start talking, and we'll get the PowerPoint as soon as we can.
We'll get hopefully the PowerPoint.
Good for you, though.
My name is Tom Barron. I'm a planner with the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. As Darren alluded to, we've been working with the city on updating its existing comprehensive plan, which was adopted in 2005. Wisconsin state statutes require that any municipality or any form of government that makes land use decisions has an adopted comprehensive plan, and that it makes decisions that are consistent with that plan. They also prescribe that communities update the plan at least once every 10 years. So this would be fulfilling that requirement for it. Starting out in the background documents of the plan, as Darren said, there's a lot of demographic data. It goes by the 9 elements. It gives an inventory of the community. We went through, a lot of that is new language. It may not look similar to the existing plan. At East Central, we have some templates that we prefer to use. There's a lot of material we like to cover in these. So you're going to see a variety of background data for the inventory. Hey, look at that. We got a PowerPoint here. So just quickly, we're in the process right now of going through the background. We'll do a couple of the takeaways from the update process, and then spend a bit of time on the future land use map. We've covered that. A bit, kind of going back here, the majority of the background data was updated, or that inventory, and an analysis was done of that inventory data as well. The majority of the goals, there are 57 goals in the existing comprehensive plan. For those goals, there's a series of objectives and actions that follow those goals, or that help implement those goals. When we went through this update process, we either modified or created 19 of those goals. So if you think about it, we have updated background information, we have an updated analysis, but the goals are very well written, and in many cases are ongoing goals. This isn't because the city hasn't been doing things to complete the goals. It's just that these are, like I said, ongoing activities. And we created a lot of new maps for this process as well. If you look at element by element, you'll see a lot of different looks at the city. As Darren mentioned, we started this back in February 2016. Our hope is that it's adopted this fall.
as I mentioned last week at the open house, these things do not take place in a vacuum. The city's been doing a lot of planning-related work while this project has taken place. We had the zoning code update was just getting wrapped up, the downtown plan. There's been, obviously, you guys know, a lot of development projects moving through. We did use the comprehensive plan update committee. I know quite a few of you were on that. We also had a variety of stakeholders involved in this, and we had 17 project meetings to date. Some quick takeaways, won't go through all these, but certainly water is important for the city, whether that's water quality or waterfront as an amenity. Landscaping also came out as a very important thing for the community. Moving on to economic development. The city, I think when you look at, for the region that East Central serves, the city has a very aggressive economic development program. A lot of things have happened a lot of things have taken place behind the scenes to make those things happen. In addition to that, the foreign trade zones and the revolving loan funds make the city somewhat unique. And kind of wrapping up the economic development, UW Oshkosh and Fox Valley Tech are, I think, very important talent attractions for the city. Housing, there's now 16 neighborhood associations. This number keeps ticking up as we've gone through the plan updates. There is a desire for the city to provide all housing options. Please keep in mind that this housing element is not in itself a housing study. It's an overview of the housing in the city, although it may make recommendations for future housing study activities. And with that, there's a strong desire to maintain and rehabilitate the city's existing housing stock. Moving on to the intergovernmental cooperation element, I think one of the standouts here is that there's a great relationship between the Oshkosh School District and the city, especially the planning department, and that the I-41 corridor is certainly unique and an important feature for the city. Land use, there's approximately going on 18,000 acres currently within the city boundaries. There is enough land to grow within the city for the projected planning period. I'm not saying that to discourage annexation, just to kind of a thought that there is land available to grow. We do use Wisconsin Department of Administration population projections to forecast out what we expect to see for population growth. With that, you're going to see in there several projections for population growth in the planning period. This is from a low end and then a high end. Moving on to transportation, bicycle and pedestrian planning was viewed as very important by the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee, along with integration for the transit services offered by the city. The next elements, utilities and community facilities. Again, the Oshkosh School District comes into play here as certainly a significant asset for the city. Another unique thing we don't see everywhere is that firefighters are also trained as paramedics. Hopefully you never need those services, but certainly a good training capability as well. Just wrapping it up here, just kind of some other takeaways. The city, I think, is very proactive, not only in economic development, but just in a lot of planning activity. There's a lot of area plans. There seems to be a lot of focus on corridor planning, and these are all strengths and assets for the city. So the future land use map, I believe there's some copies out there right now. A little bit of background on how we did this. As mentioned, we used Wisconsin Department of Administration projections. We applied that to the zoning code, the way land is currently being developed. From there, we took a look at the existing land use map in the 2005 plan. We worked with the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. We worked with city staff. We went through a lot of iterations with this. One thing I'll say, I don't think these are tough things to really capture in time. As I said, the city is constantly evolving, changing, so there may be some small adjustments made as we move towards adoption. But for the most part, we feel it's in pretty good shape. I'm not sure if we can project it up on the map for the audience.
Jeff, it's in the other PowerPoint, apparently. Yeah, but that won't be able to get picked up.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I mean, as far as this land use map, we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort going over developing the recommendations. So this one, you know, and the reason why we spent so much time on this map is we use it a lot. I mean, from the comprehensive plan standpoint, probably the thing that's used the most is this map. Anytime somebody does a zone change, anytime we annex something, we look to this map. So we wanted to make sure we got it right. And some of the biggest changes that we had to make to this existing map was we, you know, 2 years ago, as this process was starting, we were just finishing up a major update to our zoning ordinance. And what happened is we created all these mixed use categories, and these, you know, we added institutional as a district. So we had to make sure that, you know, we had a land use table, and if you look at the land use table in the land use section, we added a lot of categories into that area. So now the comprehensive plan, those land uses, they now reflect our zoning ordinance. Now, you try and do it differently. Usually you adopt a comp plan, then you implement a zoning ordinance. Well, we did it kind of opposite this way because we were following up on that zoning ordinance from 2005. But now we're pretty current with this land use map. We actually went to the effort, we sat down, I think we had the intergovernmental meeting. So we had a lot of the adjacent towns come and sit with us and meet with us, and we incorporated a lot of their recommendations from their comp plan maps onto that particular map. We also went out to the town, I think we went to the town of Inland, had a meeting with them specially, and then we went down to the town of Black Wolf and met with them to talk about some land use issues on that particular map. So we've gone to the extra effort to try and make this a really good map. The problem is the market changes over time, things change over time, so we're always, we're constantly looking at this comprehensive plan map and the zoning categories on it to make sure, or the land use recommendations to make sure that we get right. Tom, I'm sorry.
We did get it pulled up on the main screen, so anyone in the audience can't see it.
As Darren said, we did a lot of outreach to the surrounding towns to make sure that this plan is, not to say the city has to agree with everything with the towns, but there was, I think, a lot of extra effort to make sure we recognize the towns' comprehensive plans and what exists on their future land use maps. I know I've just talked quite extensively here. Questions?
Questions?
One
Go ahead.
other thing I'd like to say, if you look at some of the goals and actions and objectives, I think we try to incorporate in some places some of the city's strategic plan goals. So if you look in the housing chapter, in the housing chapter, you'll see a lot of the city's strategic plan goals in there as they relate to neighborhood and housing. So it's strong in there. I think we have some economic development goals that are in there. So we tried to incorporate those into the comprehensive plan, and you're going to see when you look through the housing section, it's there. It's going to really help us moving forward, especially as a council, to try and meet their strategic plan needs. So there are some changes. We have a lot of goals and objectives in there and actions. So it's not the same document. There are different things in there. So.
I think we added more about historic preservation too.
We did add some of that in there too.
Just for our viewing audience, what is a protected area? What does that mean?
The protected area.
Black Wolf, Makaimai, Algoma.
And if you see what Jeff did on that map, he made it look really cool because you can see on the maps, it's a very colorful map, but you can see that he overlaid that shading onto there, so you can kind of see the underlying land use in those protected areas. What those protected areas are is we have boundary agreements with Makaimai, Black Wolf, and Town of Algoma, where we do not exercise any land use control in those particular areas. That's their growth area, and they can exercise their their local planning. As part of that, we have growth areas outside of those protected areas in the towns that we can then grow into over time, and we're not going to get caught in the old days where we were constantly or potentially constantly in litigation with them. So that was a way of, we gave up something, they gave up something, and so now they can plan for those areas and not worry about us annexing away a large chunk of it.
David?
There were two areas that I had concerns.
Okay.
And I don't know, what is the appropriate way to address them?
Variety methods. If you'd like to touch on tonight, that's fine. Otherwise, we can accept if you have any written comments, or
Well, I'll do both.
Yeah, Ed's, you know, this is not the final, I mean, this is the final draft, 99%. We're still making edits. There's things in here that need to be updated yet. We went through here, the Lakeshore Golf Course is still in there. We got to pull those references out because it's not part, you know, it's not there. We've got to update some of those numbers. So we're making some adjustments to it. So we're still taking comments. So if there's some major comments that you'd like to discuss, incorporate in, please tell us, because we can make changes, you know.
There were two areas that I focused on.
Sure.
One was transportation, where I didn't see any notice or mention of Highway 45 south of Oshkosh to Fond du Lac. My sense is that's is always in potential of the DOT repairing that and putting 45 on 41. I think that to maintain 41.
Okay.
The Jackson Street, and I understand that the city is having is doing some kind of a traffic study, but to be mindful that Jackson Street is the only direct full north-south street in the community.
Aside from 41.
Huh?
Aside from 41.
Only non-interstate.
And I think that it has to be remembered that is as much that's to move traffic as much as anything else, and that to tie that off on the south with I&N and the improvement of the 26 interchange and making that accessible from the south and the south industrial parks and the businesses on that side.
Okay.
Something that we've been struggling with and to put as emphasize an action item is the West Side Arterial.
Still, yeah.
It's in there, but we've been talking about that for at least since Dal Antonio was mayor.
Yes.
So that's at least 15.
And we continue to talk about it.
And, but it's something we need to do because Clairville, we lost the opportunity with Clairville, so we've got to come to grips with that. And I think that it's important to look at that not to 44 but to 26.
And we updated that action to 26 in the plan.
Okay, I didn't notice that. I just saw the 44.
Oh no, it's to 44 because we have the boundary agreement with the town of Black Wolf. Time I took that out of play.
Okay, we got to figure out how to do it because that's the logical place to go from 21 to 26. That's the
okay.
I think the important thing for, and then in the economic development section, I think that you have to relook at the clusters, especially. It makes you feel good to say aerospace and aviation, but I think that's not really going to happen. I think we have to look at what we have in this area and what we can develop, so. I think that those four have to be looked at very seriously. I think that there should be a reevaluation of the industrial development portion of it to make sure that that's fine-tuned and really doing what it's supposed to do. And then we sort of tease around the margins with UWO, but when you look at what UW Green Bay is doing with their engineering school, I think that we need to really incorporate UW Oshkosh, totally integrate that into this economic development plan in this community. And then last, and I know it's something we're going to be talking about later, but protect the industrial parks, the integrity of the industrial parks. And look at it as protect the industrial parks from the city, not the city from the industrial parks.
Okay.
Thoughts for Tom? Ed?
I only had one question more than anything else, and it's just to understand how it ties together, because there's only a couple of little islands on the map. The environmental, you have a green hashed thing that I only see in 2 locations. What does that specifically tie to? And
Shorelands, I think that might be shoreland, wetland. things
yeah,
like-
and I guess
That's what kind of the one.
how does that
Environmental,
then?
says environmental on the list.
It says environmental on the, yeah, on the.
One
on the
here
map.
and there's one.
Yep.
There's one
It's-
up here in
it's
the
right
town of
here in
Algoma.
The island up here as well.
One here in town of Algoma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other one's up in the
There's
corner.
that one.
Yeah, there's the other one, the island right there. So, and I guess I'm just trying to understand what those tie back to in the plan, as it reflects what sort of uses are appropriate there and all that sort of stuff.
I think we put it on there, you know, fortunately, we don't have a lot of those features, but when you start to plan around them, you want to know that there's an environmental feature, so it allows you to just kind of plan around that, to know that, you know, that's not going to get developed, so, you know, what do you do next to it? We just put it on a map so you're cognizant of it, I think really is what that is.
Okay, so it made more sense to give it its own, it was a unique enough sort of natural feature that it made more sense to give it its own sort of individual designation than it did to say, it's currently being used as residential, but it's probably gonna get redeveloped as something else or not because it can't be developed
It can't
under
be-
current.
Yeah, they
Yeah, probably
current
just
standard.
can't be developed.
they largely identify areas that are in all likelihood undeveloped.
Undevelopable, okay.
For whatever.
So instead of
environmental
calling them
conditions
undevelopable on the
Oh,
plan,
environmental?
we'll say that they're environmental.
Makes it sound like a nature preserve.
Well,
Well,
you
it's
want
kind
to but you do want to distinguish between that and nature in a park.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that,
It's not.
it's not.
Yeah,
Any other questions or
I think
comments?
that was, I
for-
just want to understand that.
Huh?
Yeah, so if there are no other questions, the next steps on this or the process.
Next step is we're going to open up a public hearing in a
Right.
second, after you're done up there.
I'll be quiet then. Just an outline of it. There's a potential resolution tonight by Plan Commission. If that were to go through, there would be a first reading at City Council on September 25th, and then a second reading on October 9th.
All right. Great. Ed?
And as I understand it, you'll be making tweaks to this between whatever we do tonight, with any feedback from the group, written
Correct.
or
Correct.
so eloquently verbalized.
I wrote it all down.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. And that feedback will be addressed
Yes.
one way or the other prior
Yep.
to the council. Okay.
Yeah, and our idea is if we propose any changes, anything significant, that we'd report that back to you and to the council moving forward. Most of the changes that we're making are editorial changes. There might be some of the tables need work, the maps need to be updated. We need to add a table of contents to it, an acknowledgements page. Those things will all get added as we finalize the document.
Anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, Jason.
Jason White, 1204 Fairfax Street, Oshkosh. I wasn't intending to speak and say anything tonight, except when I was just looking at the economic development section of the proposed comprehensive plan. There was a couple references to manufacturing in there. And there was a section in there that said weaknesses, and it listed manufacturing perception. And I think I know what that section is getting at when it comes to promoting diversification. There's a lot of things that we could be susceptible to with an economic downturn or trade wars or labor force shortages, things like that, that could put our economy in somewhat of a precarious situation. But having said that, that is a strength of our economy too. And so while we need to continue to look at diversification and automation and high technology and things like that, I think it's important that the tone of our economic development report also looks at manufacturing as a strength rather than just as a weakness from a perception standpoint. So just wanted to bring that out, that just if we want to continue to massage the wording in the comp plan, that might be something to just kind of soften that language a little bit and recognize manufacturing as a strength rather than just the perception issues that we continue to understand here in Oshkosh. So.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
We're just looking for a motion on the resolution.
Move the resolution, okay.
Second?
Move the,
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Weigert,
aye.
Carey,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right.
Thank you all for that, by the way.
Yep.
Thank you all for your participation.
Been moved to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have a couple of workshop issues.
Yep.